Welcome to the Town of New Paltz Planning Board meeting of September 28th, 2015. First up on our agenda is review and approval of minutes of September 16th, 2015. Have a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, Tom. Lyle. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. For the students in the back, if you got a question or understand some of the terminology, you can stick up your hand and I will respond to them. First up on the agenda for the Town Planning Board is a public hearing. We have that on subdivisions and major site plans. In this case, the site plan is a proposed CVS, Five Guys shopping area located on 299 and North Putt corners and the thruway. So we've been reviewing this application for a while, and tonight's a continuation of an existing public hearing on that. There's an opportunity for people to get up and speak of their concerns and issues that they have for it. So with that, can I have a motion to open a public hearing?
Make a motion.
Thank you, Augusta. Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Application a couple months ago, but it was like, what are you here for? And they couldn't answer the question.
First up, and again, we're going to, timing, we'd like you to keep it to 3 minutes. And I'll give you a heads up when it's about 2.5 minutes to wrap up. Bear in mind that we always do take written comments as part of our review process. And so we'll go through this and we'll see how far we get and what we're going to do. First up is Peter Kaufman. I'd like you to, when you stand up, state your name and your address. As for the, we have somebody taking a transcription of it. Speak slowly and clearly. If she raises her hand, you're getting too fast or she's not hearing, so bear with us, okay? All right, Peter.
Hello, my name is Peter Kaufman. I live at 6 Pinecrest Road in the town of New Paltz. I spoke to the planning board on June 22nd and submitted a letter asking the planning board to please require the applicant to do a full EIS. I don't have anything special to add to that other than just to reiterate that vocal request. But I also want the planning board and the audience and the public just to think about this issue. It's hard for me not to imagine this being done without a full EIS. What we're talking about here is a tremendous impact on the environment, a tremendous impact on the traffic patterns, a tremendous impact on the community, tremendous impact on local businesses. And so once any of this happens, if this development goes forward, there's no turning back. You can't bring back wetlands, you can't bring back nesting grounds, you can't bring back calmer traffic patterns, and you can't bring back boarded up businesses, local businesses from downtown. And so I think the planning board and the village and the town, you know, we have to think very seriously about the effect that this development is potentially going to have on all areas of our community. And so it certainly warrants a full EIS, if not, I would think even more intense measures and, you know, not even letting this project go forward just because of the potential very negative effect it's going to have on our community. And again, the environment, the traffic, the businesses, and just even the sense of community here in New Paltz. So I really encourage the planning board to please take your position as planners of the town and gatekeepers of the town very seriously, and at the very, very least, require the applicant to do a full EIS. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Lee Weaver?
My name is Lee
Leslie Weaver, and I too live at 6 Pinecrest Road here in New Paltz. My husband and I became residents of New Paltz about 16 years ago. We moved to the area for employment. However, we decided to buy a house in New Paltz because of its progressive values, its unique downtown area, and the community's awareness of environmental issues, to name just a few. This proposal involving CVS and Five Guys is ill-conceived on many levels, as many people tonight will continue to point out. This development adds nothing to the appeal of our community and would be an unnecessary addition to our town. At the same time, it would threaten animal habitats, create unsafe and inefficient traffic patterns, and it would undermine the local businesses that give our town character. No one will say, New Paltz is a wonderful town. It has a CVS. And no visitor will remember our town because it has a pizza chain. Our residents and our visitors do not want to sit in more traffic or look at more strip malls full of corporate chains. At the very least, the town board must require a full EIS to explore the full impact of this project, would have on our beautiful and unique town.
Thank you, Lee. Susan?
Good evening, everyone. Susan Woodstein, Real Mill Road, Town of New Paltz. I have someone in the wings because it's 5 minutes, so we're taking. He also lives in New Paltz.
I know.
Sorry. As you know, the applicant has finally submitted revised materials which I feel like we waited rather a long time for. I've reviewed these materials, and based on my 27 years as a community planner, primarily working for municipal and governmental entities, I can attest to the fact that the planning board gave CVS and Trans Hudson every opportunity and then some to transform the proposed project from one that is 100% engineered and 0% designed to something that is more balanced and more respectful of the environment and the community. The resulting revised materials are, in my opinion, extremely disappointing in this regard, and I want to touch on a few issues. And I'm going to leave, actually, the very critical issue of detrimental impacts to the Millbrook to others to speak about who have particular expertise in that area. The first issue, again, I've talked about this time and again, is segmentation. Seeker's very clear about segmentation. A brief sensitivity analysis with regard to traffic in a letter by the applicant is not adequate in addressing segmentation. The environmental analyses prepared for the project need to address full build-out. We know the parcel zoning, we know the permitted development parameters. It's not difficult and it's not costly to do this, but it's an exercise the applicant refuses to do. Traffic. There's still unanswered questions about traffic. I'm going to name a few without reading my entire letter. We have counts from 2013, from 2014, some on a Wednesday, some on a Friday, some on a Saturday. I can't figure out how those counts were actually compiled into the AM and PM counts that they use. There's no detail about how the pass-by traffic is distributed at the intersection. I can't figure that out. Traffic backups on both North and South Putt are a major concern that's not adequately addressed. I actually have an architect friend who owns a drone, and we flew it above the intersection on September 11th, which was a Friday at 5:21, 22, and 23 p.m., and I have some pictures appended to this that show the backups on North and South Putt. This is a major issue, and everyone seems to be focused, and the state primarily focused on 299. But I want to tell you that when traffic backs up, when we prioritize the movement of traffic on 299, traffic backs up more on our lesser streets, and that's what's happening at this intersection. And this is not, it's a major problem, not just for the public, but for emergency service providers. Every emergency service provider, police, fire, ambulance, has to use PUT at some point to get to where they are going. So this is a major issue. The estimates and the impacts from traffic diverting into our residential neighborhoods via local streets, they're not adequately addressed. And I could go on, but I think the one point I want to raise again that I still have a concern about is that CME, which is the planning board's traffic consultant, does have a history of working for CVS. And they have a professional ethical responsibility to disclose this to the planning board. And the planning board has a responsibility to us, to the public, to the community, to ensure that professional ethical standards are met. and I don't see any documentation to affirm that this happened. I think the community has a right to a transportation expert working on its behalf that has no conflict. And I think this can and should be done for any future steps in this review process. I want to talk for a minute about renderings. We don't have any information on the methodology used for renderings. I can tell you from experience, renderings are a little bit art and a little bit science, and you need to know how much art and how much science to figure out whether they accurately represent conditions. As far as I can tell, they're not based on a digital elevation model. They weren't using a three-dimensional modeling tool to accurately display massing and scale. But we need methodologically sound information so that everybody understands what's being proposed. Community character, I'm going to just talk briefly. There are tax implications that need to be analyzed and studied in detail. This project will require services, police, fire. It's not something that doesn't cost the community anything. And CBS has a track record of using triple net lease structures to lower their tax assessments and to lower the taxes they pay. Somebody mentioned impacts on local businesses already, but under seeker, it is absolutely appropriate to analyze those and to understand those. And I think we all understand sort of on a visceral level that local businesses positively contribute to our economy in a myriad of ways, employment, and so on and so forth. But we need to understand the full picture of what's being proposed from an economic perspective. Tourism is part of that. It's a key driver of our local economy and our regional economy for that matter. And I want to understand, what having a CBS and additional traffic at that intersection does to tourism. Okay, should I have her do it, or you trust me to?
You got about a minute left of both of you.
I've been a planner for a very long time. I've reviewed hundreds of applications on behalf of municipalities. It's clear when applicants approach the review process as an opportunity to improve their projects through some collaboration with the community. Nothing could be further from the case here. It's painfully apparent to me that the applicant's strategy is to do as little as possible to address board and community concerns. How do we get the applicant to hear the planning board and the public? The only reliable mechanism for doing this is an EIS. The project meets the thresholds for an EIS. Your concerns as board members related either to the cost to the applicant or maybe some fear of litigation, those are not relevant criteria for making the decision. So I really urge you and trust the planning board to do what's right and to close the public hearing and require an EIS. Thank you. Thanks for your patience.
And thank you, Catherine, too.
I was projecting my voice.
I get that. Tova Weitzman?
Tova Weitzman, 5 Dusin Road, Newport. There's no doubt in my mind that you, many board members, for you, the well-being of Newport is important. You take it seriously, and I thank you for the time you volunteered. Sometimes say thankless task. Somehow I doubt that CBS cares very much about the well-being of Newport, be it community life, be it cultural life, be it local businesses, be it the environment, aesthetics. I think CBS and corporation of its magnitude and ilk often care about one and only thing, their own pocket and their own perspective. People here talk very well, they seem to know what they're talking about. I just want to encourage you to require CBS to submit the environmental impact statement to the fullest extent. I think you and us deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Judy? There you are.
Ever since this began, I've been thinking about the word impact.
Name and address for the...
Oh, I'm sorry. Judy Mage, M-A-G-E, and I'm at 171 Huguenot Street in New Paltz. And I've been here since 1978 and watched the traffic get worse and worse, and instances of gridlock get worse and worse. But mostly what I want to talk about is the result of all of the factors that people talk about with if Walmart comes on the biking and walking community. I've been for 10 years a member of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee of New Paltz, and progress has been made, but at a glacial pace, although he's saying glacial pace now that the glaciers are melting. Have to sort of look at it a little differently. I was involved, not centrally, but on the side of the people that questioned whether Walmart was going to be an asset. And the impact on downtown New Paltz business was considered one of the major environmental impacts. That is the economic impact on stores in New Paltz, the prospect of empty storefronts, all of that was considered real. I bicycle. I mean, I'm not so young anymore, but I can bicycle to Diedrich's. I can bike to a lot of downtown stores. First, the impact on Diedrich's, even on Rite Aid, has got to be taken into account. This is not, I know that not all economic development is zero-sum, but in this case, I think it would be, unless you're expecting a huge influx from the east, from Highland of new customers, but I don't think that's very likely, and if it is, that's just more gridlock. But many people, and I've been talking with neighbors and so forth, many people have the sense that they would save lots of money and that CVS would bring in jobs. And I really think that has to be analyzed. First of all, you don't save very much money in these big stores. A few pennies here and there, but made up for the amount of time that you have to spend looking for things. I mean, you walk into Diedrich's and right away there's somebody who wants to help you. The impact, the jobs would be taken away. The word cannibalize keeps coming to mind. CVS is interested in profits. To make a profit, they have to cannibalize downtown business. That's the only way they're going to really do it. And above all, the impact on the proposed link between the rail trail in Highland that brings you all the way to the bridge, and New Paltz was supposed to run along Henry Du Bois. And even now they're trying to make that a more a safer route for bikers and pedestrians, and that's a very good development. If CVS is plunked down on that corner with all the people trying to get into that parking lot, I don't see how that corner would ever be conducive to the traffic coming from the east of New Paltz, from the Highland Rail Trail. So I'm going to close now, but that is, as far as I know, I don't see any real benefits to us from CVS, and just more cholesterol from Five Guys. Okay.
Thank you. Sherry Lynn Goldstein?
Hi, my name is Shari Lynn Goldstein. I live at 4 Van Cleek Avenue, New Paltz. I don't have much to say that my neighbors haven't already put very eloquently. I just wanted to come up and underscore that a lot of us care about our town, about this corner. We care about the environmental impact. We care about the visual impact. I tried moving away from New Paltz for a couple of years. I moved to the Berkshires, didn't compare, missed it, hated it there, loved it here, had to come back. And part of the reason why is because my community is so passionate about preserving not just the feeling of our community, but also just the environmental integrity of our community, the business integrity of our community. And even though I don't have all of the facts that some of the other speakers had to present tonight, I wanted to underscore that they do indeed speak for me. And I guess that's it. Thank you.
Michael, go down. There you go.
Hello, Mike O'Donnell. I live in Gardner. Keep that between us. I I wanted to start by addressing one issue that was a response to previous public comments about economics. This is a quote from the response. Development of the parcel as proposed by the applicant will result in an increase to the tax base for the entire town of New Paltz while not increasing the demand for municipal services or increasing the student population of the local school district. The applicant does not propose any tax abatements and as such will be taxed upon the full assessed value of the project when developed. So my question is, how are they going to avoid any demand for municipal services? Any demand? Are they going to have their own fire department and police department? Will they maintain the surrounding roads on their own? In terms of, let's say, police calls or court calls, CVS, I looked on their website under loss prevention, and they have an entire section of their website dedicated to loss prevention associates, people that catch shoplifters. They have 112 open positions currently at the moment, so I think they take shoplifting pretty seriously. So I think you certainly expect some demand on our local police services. In terms of not seeking tax abatements, that's fine, but will they agree to never challenge their tax assessment? Because CVS has been known to aggressively challenge their assessments. And overall, in terms of the tax-based question, I would ask whether or not they're at this point qualified to even make such a statement that it will be an increase to the tax base. How can you do it without analyzing any data, without looking at the whole circumstance? When you consider the nature of their business, they're offering a lot of redundant services and products, things you can already get in town and in the surrounding areas. So the question becomes, how much of the new revenue being created there is not simply displaced revenue from elsewhere versus new revenue created? And if it's a substantial portion of displaced revenue, then that's going to have an effect somewhere else. And it doesn't exist in a vacuum in terms of taxes. Just because they pay their tax bill doesn't mean the tax base goes up. And now I want to address some issues on the revised EAF. Some of this is going to sound familiar because I've been up here before to explain these same points, but they still haven't corrected it. And I honestly don't know what the legal ramifications are for having an incorrectly filed EAF, but I would ask that you consider that question because there are some obvious errors in here. And I'll go to C2B. This is a question one. Is the site of the proposed action within any local or regional special planning district? Well, it is next to the Shonga Mountain Scenic Byway. It is on the byway, so that would be within some kind of district. I don't know if it qualifies as the ones that would necessitate checking that as yes, but that's a question I would ask. It's also within the watershed of the Millbrook Preserve, and that has a management plan, at least a draft management plan in place. So while that question is answered no, it potentially should be yes. This is D2B in the EAF. Would the proposed action cause or result in alteration of, or increase or decrease in size of, or encroachment into any existing wetland, water body, shoreline, beach, or adjacent area being key here? The answer is no. And this is in their words, in the same EAF, D2E3, they state, a portion of the stormwater management facilities discharged to an existing inlet within the Ulster County right-of-way of North Cut Corners Road, which in turn discharges into the west side of the roadway into a wetlands area. So I don't know how they can say no to that question when they're obviously stating later on, yes.
Michael, can you wrap up? I know
Sure.
you got it written out and you can...
Will the proposed action result in increased traffic? Okay, EAF says, yes, traffic study says, the CVS Pharmacy Five Guys restaurant generated traffic is not expected to cause any significant impact. It can't be yes and no. Will the proposed action produce noise that will exceed ambient levels? They said no. I still don't understand how that's possible. Maybe they're doing a soundproof bubble. If so, maybe we can have the bubble when they're done and use it for other purposes. Are any agricultural lands or highly productive soils present? 2010 draft master plan has a map of farmland. The entire site is within an area marked as prime and important farmland. And this is a project within 5 miles of officially designated landmarks. They list 3. There's dozens.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. Dan? Let me see you. Oh, there you are.
Hey guys, Daniel Torres, Town of New Paltz. I want to start tonight by thanking the planning board for volunteering for our town and also state that my comments tonight are strictly my own and not necessarily any boards I may serve. Like the many other people who have commented on the CVS proposal, I too have serious concerns. One of the few compelling arguments I've heard about this proposal is that it will add to our tax base. I would like to remind residents of when Wilmer Wright's lawyer came to a town board meeting last year and told the board that we should be happy with their proposal because they will become our biggest taxpayer. Of course, they said this without acknowledging all the hidden costs in the proposal. So yes, it is true that CVS, the Walmart of the pharmacy world, will add to the town's tax base. CVS won't just stop there. They'll also add to the traffic. They'll add time for emergency services to get through our town. They'll add to noise pollution when they cut down 6 acres of trees, and they will add dirty runoff to the Millbrook Preserve. How ironic that the town and village, which has taken such pride in guaranteeing this land be used for our community, and yet we may allow a private company to damage this treasure that will serve generations. CVS doesn't stop there. They will also add to their profit margins by underpaying their employees, and they will add more dollars to their investors when they do a net lease deal and have their property taxes cut like they've done in countless areas throughout the country. CVS will add to the tax base, even when they fight to get their taxes slashed. But in the process, they will do tremendous harm environmentally, aesthetically, and ultimately, and likely financially as well. I believe this project needs a full environmental impact statement so we can better see all the other gifts CVS would like to add to our town. I ask that the planning board consider the concerns of so many residents and take a much needed better look at this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Julie?
Julie Lillis, New Paltz resident. Thank you so much for serving on the board and for listening to so many of us for over the past couple months. I would like to keep it short to help it move along. No surprise, I would certainly like to reiterate my interest in seeing this applicant do an full EIS. And I'd also like to reiterate what Susan had mentioned about segmentation. I think it's crucial for us to know why, if it's being allowed, how is that possible that this is legal segmentation when there's another 2 possible businesses that are going to be in the same plaza, part of the same, and realtors are advertising this 3rd pad site. So I don't personally understand how it would be legal segmentation, because I have read what segmentation is. There are many things. I have a little bit of a quirkiness. I love going over this EAF in great detail, and I won't go through it all because I don't have the time. But I, like Michael O'Donnell, I'd like to point out a couple of things. He already took some of the things I was going to mention, but I did notice that the revised EAF is almost identical to the previous EAF. And it's a crucial document, and Susan has mentioned this is, sort of unacceptable, and it's confusing why this is both incomplete and inaccurate in many ways still. One of the very small differences that I noticed is in the portion where they discuss where stormwater runoff will be discharged. And one thing that they changed is that it's included that it will be directed to adjacent properties in addition to infiltrating into the ground. So they say it will go also directly into off-site wetlands. And so that is a change, and I wondered why, and I think it's something that should be looked into. The idea was, as I've heard, that there's an infiltration process, and for one, we also don't know how it's going to infiltrate with fill. Is that the same as into regular soil that's been there for years? But what we want to know is how this is going to affect the wetlands. So especially as it goes into the Millbrook Preserve, because I've stood on the ground there and I know that there's actually, the wetlands there does not take care of all the water. It's not just seeping into it. There's a stream now running through. Maybe originally it was just supposed to all be a place where things infiltrated. But right now there's a stream that runs into a pond, that runs into a stream, that runs into the Millbrook, and maps show that, and maps do show that this is in the Millbrook watershed. So we need to know how that's going to affect. And I also want to just say one brief thing about the environmental, ecological and wetland assessment report. This was a study that showed it's really, I want to point out that it's really just a sort of a summary, it seems. It's very narrow, not extensive, comprehensive study, especially of habitat. It's really just a 2-page report. So to me, we need to really look into this further and have a more extensive study done if we really want to know something about that land and its value ecologically and habitat-wise. There are some things that I would question, which is it doesn't appear, there's a small isolated wetland that's 175 square feet, and it says that it doesn't appear to hold water for long periods, which is the definition of a vernal pool, and then it says it doesn't appear to meet the definition of a quality vernal pool. And I looked in Town Code 139.4, and you cannot, there's no possible way to tell if it fits, with all due respect, but there's no way to tell that if it in fact fits the definition of a quality vernal pool in July. There's just no way to tell that because you can't find those eggs, they're not there. You'd have, in order to find out if it's a regulated wetlands, which would be under a quality vernal pool, which it would be if it were a quality vernal pool, we just can't know in a single day in July. It has to be done when there would be water in the spring and when there's evidence of eggs and things. And so that's something that really needs to be looked into. And if we have an EIS, that should be looked into further. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. Michael?
Hello, my name is Michael Zeeler, 2 Henry Court, New Paltz, New York. I should note that I am currently the chair of the Village of New Paltz Planning Board. However, I'm speaking tonight as a citizen of New Paltz who has 18 years of experience working as a volunteer in the community on zoning, planning, and open space protection. Let me deliver the punchline up front here. This proposal will generate numerous moderate to large impacts on a variety of things. Let me list a few. Significant impacts on the site itself, impacts on neighboring and downstream surface waters, ponds, and wetlands, impacts on groundwater. Local ecosystems and migratory species will be affected. Traffic at the site and in surrounding residential neighborhoods will be affected. This proposal is verifiably inconsistent with our master plan and other adopted land use plans, and it will certainly have an impact, as people have said, on the economics and quality of life. I list these things specifically because they're categories in Part 2 of the EAF. That's the first section that you, the planning board, will be discussing, deliberating, and filling out. As has been noted, the applicant has given you another version of its Part 1, dated September 14th, 2015, and as people have said, it looks an awful lot like the previous version. It still has gaps in information and fails to, for instance, discuss in any way what the intention is in terms of drilling wells, what the drawdown will be, what impacts it will have on nearby residents and neighboring bodies of water. It fails to mention that they plan to clear cut 4 to 6 acres of trees. And as has been noted, it completely ignores the issue of segmentation. The DEC Secret Handbook devotes considerable space to segmentation, and you, the planning board, are being asked to review, as they say, quote unquote, the whole action. The Secret Handbook asks, what's the basic test for segmentation, and it lists 8 points. If one of them, just one, applies, then segmentation is likely. This application, at least 5 of them apply. There's a common purpose for this site. It's likely to be retail and office. It's all located on one parcel. The impacts are cumulative. An additional building means more traffic. It means more impervious surfaces built, more trees and habitat lost, more stormwater runoff, and more groundwater pumped out of the earth. The site's under common ownership, and there's much evidence from documents presented by the applicant in various places that the 3 sites are part of a common plan, broken into 2 parts. I'll provide detailed written comments to you about the latest version of the EAF and responses that they've given, and I'll email those to you all later this week. But let me close with a quote that's from our town master plan on page 31. The land use plan has identified areas in the community as sensitive environmental areas. These areas are, and I'll just list some of them, the Plattekill Brook Gorge, Huguenot Historic District, the Humpo Marsh, the Wallkill River, and the Tributary 13 watershed. For those who don't know, Tributary 13 is the DEC's name for our Mill Brook. This proposal, this site plan, is 100% within the Tributary 13 or Mill Brook watershed. And the land use plan within our master plan says that environmental protection under seeker should be accorded to these areas. But until that time, the town planning board will give careful consideration to any development in these areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael. Kevin?
Evening, how are you? I'm Kevin Borden, 12 Calvin Boulevard, New Paltz, New York. Thanks again to the planning board for your tireless volunteer service. I know these hearings can go on for a while. So I don't want to add too much to what folks have already stated around impacts on the environment, on traffic. But I do think it would be important to unpackage the fiscal impact just a little bit more. So as folks had said, we really do need to bring in a qualified, unbiased expert to do a robust fiscal analysis of this project. Without doing so, we really are playing a pretty high-stakes poker game that may be placing our community's fiscal health in jeopardy. So, as Michael and a couple other folks said, one of the issues that they have said, and it's true, they're not seeking a pre-development tax abatement. But the history about these net lease deals are a little bit puzzling. So the way they work is that, so net lease makes CVS responsible for property taxes and other expenses. And so to compensate their investors, they pay rents that include a premium above the cost of the building itself. So after they move in, the net lease basically becomes a financial product on the open market. So what we've seen in CVS's experience and many other towns across the country is that they file appeals to their property tax levy by basically saying that the price the investors are paying is not the correct tool for determining their tax liability. So their argument is their assessment should hinge on the amount the landlord could get if CVS moved out and someone else moved in. That lowers their assessment because pharmacies like CVS will pay higher rents than other tenants. So the same premiums they use to lure investors to purchase their net lease is exactly what gives them leverage to decrease their tax liabilities. Is it legal? Yes. Is it confusing? Probably a tad. Is it moral? I'm not so sure about that. Unfortunately, communities don't sniff out this strategy until it's too late. The other thing that a fiscal analysis could also look at, and we provided studies before to the planning board on this, is what happens to the needed use of community services when you increase alcohol availability, especially at a busy intersection. Again, these really point to the need for a full EIS of this project. And the last thing I want to close out and say is that at previous public hearings, occasionally we'll hear a statement from the applicant that says, rather dismissive and say, we haven't heard anything new. And in my mind, if that is what a company like CVS is hearing at public hearings, it may be time to re-examine their entire business model and way of being. So again, really thank the planning board for your tireless service to our community. It's wonderful to hear many comments again tonight, and all the best.
Thank you, Kevin. Neil. You? Yep.
Front of the line. Thank you. I want to apologize right off the bat.
Neil. Name and address.
Neil Betez. I live in New Paltz, 47 Elting Ave. I'd like to apologize if I come off like I'm lecturing you, but I've been teaching a graduate course in environmental science at Bard this past semester, so I may wag my finger, but this was a perfect example I used with my class to talk about unintended consequences and environmental impacts. And we spent the day today talking about how would we translate the effects of this building for people that may not have as much of a background. And I want to start off by saying one of the reasons this is important is because it's in the headwaters of the Millbrook Preserve. And the fact that it's in the headwaters gives it even more importance because it means it's much higher up in the watershed, and any impact that you have on that parcel of land cascades down throughout the entire watershed. And one of the bigger impacts for this development is going to be the stormwater. And so in a typical forest, when it rains, the water falls on the forest. Some of it makes it through the canopy, so it fills up the soil pores, and then the remaining water trickles into the groundwater, and then it seeps into the streams, and the streams rise slowly, and then after the storm, they go down slowly. When you put impervious surface on, the water runs off very quickly, and it rushes into the stream, and then you get this big spike. And what happens is, it then gouges out all of the stream channels and end up with these big, incised streams, which you'll see in a lot of urban areas if you go into Poughkeepsie. And what that does, it disconnects the stream from the surrounding landscape. And there are a lot of ways to engineer around this, and this development is doing a lot of that. There are a lot of stormwater retention ponds. So they acknowledge that they are trying, that there is going to be an impact, and they're trying to mitigate that impact. And it mitigates it, but it doesn't solve it. And just to put it in terms that may be familiar to people, for the average rainfall that falls on this area every year, water has mass. So a gallon of water weighs 8 pounds. Right? So over the course of a year, if you add up all of that water that normally would just trickle into the ground and only some of it would make it to the stream, now it all runs off. And so by paving this whole area, even though you're trying to control the rate and the volume that runs off, you're changing it, right? And so if you add up all of that weight, now you're adding 50 to 60 million pounds of water to the top of this watershed every year. And it's like having a huge bowling ball with nothing stopping it. It just runs off and it just crashes down through the landscape and just kind of bangs up the stream the whole way. And the town and the village have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars to acquire and preserve the Millbrook Preserve. And by building this development right in the headwaters, you're more than likely to have an impact. And I think you need to do the full CEQA to find out what that impact will be. So, thank you.
Thank you, Neil. Does anybody else wish to speak at the public hearing? I guess there is someone else. Matthew.
Hi, my name is Matt Bailey. Live at 5 Empire Manor in New Paltz. And thank you for your time. I'm asking the town of New Paltz Planning Board to require an environmental impact study for the proposed CBS development on the corner of Route 299 North Buckhorn Road. Our community deserves to fully understand the potential environmental, traffic, and community character impacts of this proposal. This is not an unreasonable request, especially when you consider the real and potential development pressures this town has been experiencing in recent years. CBS, Five Guys, Hampton Inn, the Lodge, Gatehouse parking, expanding the rail trail, plans for another potential motel in Gunks, and an increasing tourist and residential population make it incredibly important that every developer do thorough impact reviews, not in a bubble, but with a greater community need in mind, aka master plan. I'm excited to see more people fall in love with our town, and I'm excited for some of these projects. However, my wife and I fell in love with New Paltz over 20 years ago, specifically because it wasn't Route 9 and Wappingers. New Paltz seemed like a town that was collectively thoughtful in how it would grow. A drive-through pharmacy may be convenient to that's a convenience that stands out among the other 3 pharmacies in town, but we also must consider, among other things, the convenient location of the firehouse and their access to town, the convenient slip lane on the corner that removes cars from heavy uptown traffic, and the convenience of less polluted water flowing into Millbrook Preserve. Main Street will always be in 2 lanes unless you move all the downtown buildings back 15 feet. I don't think that's going to happen. More development means more congestion, and I asked the board to do its job in making sure our town grows responsibly. Route 9, without the extra lanes, is where we're heading if New Paltz doesn't require large corporate developers to acknowledge the impacts that they likely have on small communities. And an EIS is simply that protection to help ensure a healthy future for our community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak at the public hearing? I have a motion to close the public hearing for tonight. And we'll discuss continuation when we discuss the application. Thank you. What time is it?
7:46.
Oh, okay. All right. At this time, we do a public comment session. Generally, anybody has any issues to raise or wishes to discuss with the planning board outside of the public hearing, we bring it up now. Yes.
I was just wondering, how many people here are actually pro this building?
Yeah.
Like, if you were to raise your hand, how many of you are with building the CVS and 5S?
I don't think you'll find too many except the applicant, okay?
I was thinking,
All right.
yeah, because having like a debate on a public meeting debate with people who are mostly against it is kind of one-sided. That's why I was confused.
But it's open to everybody.
Yeah.
They don't
Okay.
Well, if I could, just one comment, because I'm the only one who did raise my hand.
Okay.
I represent the owner of the property as their broker. I've represented them since 2008. And their interest here today is not whether or not CBS is the boogeyman, is what do they do with this property should this project not proceed? And what I have worked for a number of years now is to try to find a way that this project will move forward or die. If this group feels that the EIS is the most appropriate way, then I hope everybody in the room who wanted an EIS, a full environmental impact statement, will accept the outcome of that EIS, as well as robustly as they have requested. Because the seller of this piece of property would like to move on with their life. They don't need it, they pay taxes on it, they pay a lot of taxes on a vacant piece of dirt. And they would really appreciate it if the thing could move ahead.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
I just want to say, it's not a debate, because you said it's a debate. It's open public comment, and they are hearing the positive side from the developer that wants to develop that property. So they are hearing both sides.
I don't want to have a debate. It's just really a comment to the planning board rather than to the audience. So I do appreciate your comments and concerns. Any other public comments on it? Okay, before I begin the application review, any of the students have any comments? What went on or anything? If not, I'll go over and take a 5-minute break. I'll sign their documents to show that they were at least here an hour. First up is Bruce, the boys, for the application. Anybody need signatures? I know you gotta sign off on it.
I couldn't find my documentation.
Come on up.
You have to give it back.
Let's have a seat, gentlemen. Folks, you want to take the conversation outside so we can continue the meeting here now? Thank you. Okay. So we're doing a site plan on
Boyce Road for Bruce Du Bois.
Oh, nice. Your own road.
your own road.
I have my engineer here, Lou Du Bois.
No one says Dubois, huh?
No.
What are your thoughts?
You gotta be in the academic. When I was in college, I was Du Bois.
Yeah.
It seems like moved to Highland, or, you know, back out of college.
Yeah. When I moved out here, it's really hard for me to say Dubois.
Du Bois Road, it's Henry Du Bois Road.
French and Indian Wars. It wasn't so popular to use the French pronunciation.
Exactly.
So they changed it then. All right.
Okay, Dave, you want to just fill the board in? This is basically the crossing we're talking about, right on...
Yeah, we met here a month and a half ago or so and discussed the building siting at the time, and there's a wetland, that there's an old farm road, as I recall. So your site plan, I guess, Lou, if you can tell us why you're here.
Oh, well, we were involved, and it was the nearness of the wetland location in the driveway. And that's basically what drove, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I think that's the reason
Yeah.
why, right? We had no wetlands up in here. We had a wetland, it was delineated by this fellow right here. And there are no wetlands that are actually in that we are going to impact. And that's the basic question. I was asked in that August meeting to locate the major trees, which I did there, and around that site, which is the most logical. We have approved Ulster County Board of Health on that lot. And we feel that we've satisfied all the requests of the board, to the best of my knowledge.
Okay, just...
The driveway got relocated, Tom. We relocated,
Yes, you had it in front.
I relocated the driveway so it went to the south and came back up that way, rather than, because Stacy had a concern that there was a wet area down in here. We couldn't find it, but it's just lines on the paper. But we brought this driveway up in there, and this is like that old farm road that Dave was just talking about. There is an old woods road that goes up here and actually goes that way. So we're just going to come off of that. This is up on a rise, so we have gravity flow to our septic.
And we made the driveway at least on the
Oh yeah, they also wanted the turnout.
Emergency. Right.
Emergency turnout, and that's what this is right here.
This is an approved subdivision lot, so it's kind of confusing why we're doing a site plan, but we want to make sure that what they were doing out there was not going to encroach on wetlands.
Well, it's already an approved subdivision lot for constructing the residence, right?
Yeah.
So what authority do we have?
I think it's just to make sure that the way it's being done is sensitive to what's out there.
Okay.
The wetlands are out there, there's no farm roads, as long as they stay on that. We talked about a turnout. I think this is something that Stacy has to have for the building permit, is a turnout if the driveway is over 500 feet.
That's here.
So that's this here, right here, that little area.
Yes, so emergency vehicles could pass, that was necessary.
Right.
All right,
We're basically here for your
Again.
approval.
Aren't they all?
I'm not sure this
But this
is
is a little different.
I think it's a, yeah, I would think it was a wetland permit.
Whatever you issue.
I know, whatever.
So I guess the question is there anything within the regulated area that requires the permit?
If there is it's an existing farm road, that you're staying on top of that, that's not in the wetland. It would be in the buffer.
It's in the buffer.
Right, so yeah.
Are you paving it? Is it going to be paved?
It's in the buffer.
It'll be, it's going to be a, item 4, not a blacktop.
But you're going to put something on top?
It's already been done, yeah, it's a stone driveway that goes up.
Shell driveway.
Was it shell in 2000?
No.
Okay.
No, it's just a stone.
So you're adding shell?
Did you add anything to build up the driveway in the last couple of years?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
you want to be able to get back there.
Yeah.
Except when it's dry, sometimes,
Yep.
my brother hunts on the property and he lets us drive the truck back there.
What, take the deer out?
Yeah, right. That's all it's been used for the last, 15 years.
Is there any ditching that's required in connection with this?
So why did this come to the planning board? I'm always curious about these things.
Well, first of all, from Stacy's and from us, did it fall under the, was it into the buffer, was it into the wetlands? Did it need a wetlands permit for crossing the wetlands? So, it was flagged out, we met with them, previously before the governing board to see if we can, address the trees, address, the driveway, and they did make some modifications to this diagram, identified the trees, moved this road up here, for the lot. Now I'm just trying to figure out, is it a requirement from a permitting point of view, from our point? And that's why Stacy sent it to us.
So were there a lot of trees above?
There was.
No, there's only
Very short.
a couple, yeah. It's an old, like they said, this is an old farm road, for it. Nobody's been up there except to hunt for years.
For years.
Consider it making.
It's grown over. I mean, it used to be a farming field, but.
Field, now they wanna, right.
You would never know that. You would never know.
No.
Can I suggest that since it's not what it appeared to be, it's a wetland permit question, and I'd like to take advantage of Norbert offline and see if there is anything that is regulated here. There's a general provision that says any issue that's determined by the wetland inspector to be a cause for concern, but I don't, from the sound of it, see that happening. But I would like to have the opportunity to discuss it with him, and maybe you could consider granting the wetland permit subject to, the question is a wetland permit required?
Yeah, A, is a wetland permit required? Do we have sufficient information to grant the permit?
So I would say at the moment, we don't know. But I think after consultation with Norbert, we can determine if it does not apply. And if it does not apply, the applicant can proceed forward with whatever safeguards may be necessary. So if it does apply, then the board will have to take action to issue the permit. So I think
Okay. I think,
yes, at the moment, it's looking like
what I
I
would suggest for this application at the present time is that we will get back to you on whether you need a wetlands permit after we discuss it with our wetlands consultant and review the town law under that. If you don't, we'll notify you that you don't, okay? And that you can go ahead and, based on this, and get fill out a building permit or what have you, the house up on it. If you do need a wetlands permit, we'll determine exactly what you need and then schedule you for a meeting or submission of that information, okay?
All right.
So,
What's the time frame on this?
we will know by, I'll put it this way, our meeting, our next meeting is October 19th, so you will know, well, if you need to do anything, you'll have time to get it to us by October 19th.
I have one question. You indicate a variance is required?
Excuse me?
The application indicates a variance is required?
That was per Stacy. She told me how to fill out that front sheet.
Do you know what the variance is for?
Something to do with the wetlands. It's allowing us to have a driveway within the buffer zone of the wetlands. That's basically the only thing that's driving this whole scenario.
So it's not a standard zoning board variance for some dimensional requirement?
No, it's nothing to do with land, it's not a ZBA issue at all. Where we normally think of a variance as ZBA, would have an answer to that. This is something else.
Basically, you need a special use permit to put a driveway in the buffer, I think, what Stacy told me.
I'll talk to Stacy tomorrow.
Yes.
Is
We'll
things
clarify.
been 2 lots, or we're making?
No, it's one lot. It's always been one lot.
It's always been 1 lot.
You can see the other 2 lots by your left hand, yeah. There are already houses on those.
So could we grant conditional approval if there's no wetland permit needed, so they don't have to come back and do that?
Well, there's nothing to grant
There's
approval
nothing
for.
to approve.
You don't have to prove
Okay, it's
anything.
not
They
too
don't
bad.
need anything
Yeah.
from us.
Yeah, but we need something to close this
Right.
issue.
And you'll get back there?
Yes.
Okay.
Like I
If
said,
it's just a letter that you review it and you find, your findings indicate that there's no
Yes.
need for a permit.
between Robert, George, Stacy, we'll draft up exactly what the requirement is.
To know that,
And if there
right.
isn't anything,
Yeah,
you'll get
because
the
it's
letter
really-
for that.
The
I
bottom
know.
line is we
You
gotta
wanna-
satisfy Stacy. really.
Yeah, I know. But I think, because again, I got my old one here, and I saw how you changed it, and we put, the markings on it, so I think you've
Well, we
updated
had
the
the
map.
meeting and
Yeah,
that's based on that.
so,
We've done everything you.
and I still got 2 question marks on planning board issue, but we'll get it resolved, within the next 2 weeks.
Okay.
And back to you, one way or the other on it,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
Thanks for. Is Tim Brooks here? Okay, before I get into Trans tonight, introduce Norbert to our planning board. Dawn's been doing the wetlands inspection on CVS, Trans Hudson property. He's gone out and done Mohawk and OSI. We have a report from him on this, but I think it's just an opportunity. Just go over what you do and where you go when with doing some of these wetland reports.
Sure. And again, this has been in consultation with Dave and Mike in terms of whatever the scope of work is related to the wetland inspector. Generally, what we'll do is we'll gather whatever information is available in terms of site plan, whatever remote sources are available to the New York State DEC, the federal agencies like the National Wetland Inventory Maps. We'll take a look at soil surveys, aerial photos. We'll get the best sense as possible of what might potentially be there. Then we take whatever consultant reports are done or engineering drawings. We'll review those, and then we go on site and we walk the site. In our report to the CBS Five Guys project, we included an aerial photograph with the GPS track location of basically showing where we were on the site still, we can have a record of being there and walking in particular areas. This report basically is a summary of our findings, a summary of our remote resources that we use, documentation from various agencies on what known resources are in the area, and it's an assessment of what's there in terms of wetland and ecological resources. And it discusses how these wetlands relate to the town wetland law. And it's kind of an overview of what we provided the town planning board for the CBS report. And I suspect we'll be, in consultation again, we'll be doing a similar scope of services for the Mohawk Foothills project and also the OSI River to Ridge Trail.
Yes.
Over, like, how long of a period of time did you observe the site? I'm just wondering.
I'm sorry?
How long did you observe the CBS site? Over what period of time?
Just a day.
Okay.
It was basically a day site visit to
Gotcha.
get an overall assessment of what was
yeah.
there. So again, we kind of hone in on, is there any significant habitats there?
Mhm.
Is there anything unusual ecological communities? Are there any wetlands there? Even, again, if we have a consultant's report, to make sure things conform to the requirements of the town wetland law. Basically, we go there to inspect it.
Gotcha. I mean, I know you can look at, you said you did the soils and the plants there and everything to see, but I guess my question is kind of the same one that Julie had about the vernal pool. Because it was such a dry year, it's July, how do you know that definitively it doesn't meet the qualifications for a quality vernal pool? Just with,
Yeah, and that was a very fair question. If I was on the other end of the table, I'd be raising that one myself. In this case, it was barely recognizable as a depression in the land, and very small one at that. I just happened to notice a couple carrick sedges and other things that keyed me in on the fact that there was some wetland vegetation there. I took photographs of it, which I put in my report. I've also, my judgment was based upon best professional judgment, having observed and done many vernal pool studies over the years, and seeing what constitutes a viable vernal pool for amphibian breeding and so forth, and how it relates to the definition of a quality vernal pool in the town wetland law. If you were a layperson, then I think we walked out and looked at this, and I had to convince the engineer that it was actually met the most minimal characteristics of being wet. And since it was isolated with no inflow or outflow, that's the basic definition of a vernal pool.
And you don't think that could be a function of like a very dry July?
It wouldn't have mattered. You look at the characteristics that indicate where it got its hydrology from. Is it a deep depression? Like if you go into vernal pools in July that are really good, substantial vernal pools, you'll have even in July, you'll typically have wetter, mucky soils because of organic matter that collects over the years. There's no organic matter in this little depression. Just a few dried leaves, remnant of what you would find in a mud puddle if you had water there for relatively short duration.
And I think I had in some note somewhere that someone said there were cattails on the site, but I didn't see that on your list of plants. I don't know if you memorized that whole list of plants.
Yeah, and again, I mean, this is really a cursory one-day survey out there, so I think I get a pretty good representative view of what the plant life. If there were cattails, in my recollection, they'd probably be right along the roadside in that roadside ditch, which, if I understood the site plan and the property boundaries, I'm not sure that ditch was actually located in the property, perhaps in the right-of-way.
It's in the right-of-way.
Okay. All right. I guess those are my initial thoughts. I guess with the question for the board, because this was just such kind of a cursory environmental review, would it be worthwhile, getting a more comprehensive habitat assessment, or just to get more information about the site?
Well, I guess to answer that from my own perspective as a biologist, I look at hundreds of sites, thousands of sites over the years. And you get a kind of a default feeling in terms of what's significant and what's not. When walking this site, it to me looked like an old farm field that had reverted over the years to successional forest. And didn't have any of the other characteristics that would key me into saying there's something unusual or significant here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna have wildlife there. You're gonna have possum and deer and blue jays and robins and all the other typical wildlife that you associate with successional forest in an urban or suburban setting.
Yeah.
It's gonna be different habitat than when you get off into the Millbrook Forest proper. You're going to have larger contiguous areas of forest, and you're going to have different wildlife species utilizing that.
And what are your thoughts on that, that a lot of people have brought up, the discharge into the larger wetlands?
Well, that's something I'm going to defer to Dave.
Okay.
It's really a stormwater issue.
Yeah. All right.
Ready?
Yeah.
Drainage depends on a lot of factors, a lot of parameters, but believing unless you've got really sandy soils that there's no runoff from a site into a stream is not a factor, especially with slope soils, a lot of factors involved. So there is runoff now into that culvert and into that wetland. The new stormwater regulations, in fact, the ones that came out in 2015, are even more stringent. There's not only way back in 95, there used to be rate reduction. So you didn't have the rate that left the site after development greater than what it was on pre-development. Since that time, there's been water quality treatment that came out in 2003, that there was different ways to treat the water. This site actually has bioretention areas and underground infiltration units. So it's putting a lot of water back into the ground. It's not leaving the site. In the 2010 requirements on the speedies, on the stormwater permit, now there's also volume reduction. So there's less water leaving the site after it's developed than before in its condition right now. So
How can that be? It's just so, I mean,
putting it in the
miracle
ground.
of technology, I guess. Yeah.
Well,
You're actually putting it in the ground instead of having it run off through the culvert into the wetland. So there's actually a reduction in the amount of volume that's going down instead of the big bowling ball that
Gotcha.
would be the case if there was paving all over and no runoff reduction, or the rate was not less. The water quality is a real issue here. The way it's being done is put in the ground for the most part.
So in other words, they're putting in more, I'll call it bioretention areas that use soil that will drain it down further than running it off on top of clay or something like that.
Right, and actually there was something that came up about where the infiltration units, the underground storage units that the stormwater is put in and it infiltrates into the soil. The testing required on that is 4 feet below that unit to make sure that there's infiltration down well below that unit, that it doesn't hit something and stop and your design is flawed. There's a lot that's into the latest stormwater management
So how deep are some of these bioretention? What's needed to develop a quote bioretention area? How far?
Well, if you look at the plans, you'll see that the bioretention is about 4 feet. There's actually a really good bioretention area that's close here. It's right out the front door. We did that about 7 or 8 years ago. There's one that works. Bioretention has got about 4 feet of soil, and it's got plants that can handle inundation, different inundation. It really is a filter that cleans the stormwater, and there's a pipe that drains out after it's cleaned that goes into stormwater pond or in this case, some infiltration units.
Are these the kind of measures that are considered in the Millbrook report?
Millbrook report didn't consider all of the practices that are required right now. The stormwater requirements are much greater than what I see when I read the management plan and the Millbrook management plan.
So that's extra protection, not less, correct?
It's extra. It's beyond the normal stormwater that was envisioned in the Millbrook Preserve plan.
Okay, and what about, well, I guess, what's your opinion on the impacts of the water on the well drilling local?
There's about 6 acres here that would be, if you consider there were 1 acre lot zone, you would have maybe 5 lots here. That would be 2,000 gallons a day would be the design load for 5 lots. This is less than that.
Okay, so it's
The
less
water
than it could be.
usage is.
All right.
I mean,
Yeah.
you can look at a way at how much 40 inches of rain comes down on the type of soil. You get about 30% that actually gets down to the groundwater. That's a rough number. And you can see that there's plenty of water here for the use. It's a very small use.
Okay.
In
Yeah,
fact, if you look at the plan and see the septic system on the CVS building is very small compared to the Five Guys.
Yeah,
The
Five
restaurant
Guys,
is much
Yeah.
bigger.
All right.
Or you were talking about, when we were out there walking, about that site being secondary growth and probably part of the laydown area on the freeway?
Yeah, you look at it, yeah, it's bordered by, first of all, the site itself, you're right. It did, when you walk through there and you see stone walls, and so you knew it had some farming activity, you know, it had been logged, you see old stumps and so forth, but not a long time. In this case, it looks like a lot of representative species of what we term successional forests that have grown up after farming ceased. Turns into field, turns into shrubland, turns into young woodland. That's basically what covers this site. It's got a house on it, you know, an old structure and a lot of debris around it. It's been impacted, at least from an ecological perspective, by the thruway. You've got 299, and then you've got South Putt Corners Road. So, although it's not truly isolated from a wildlife use perspective, it's really severely impacted just by all those use features around it. That's another thing that enables us to say it doesn't have any real significance ecologically. Yeah, there are going to be some impacts to wildlife habitat. Anytime you destroy habitat, you have some wildlife impacts.
Yeah.
No getting around it.
What about, I mean, this is, well, I don't know exactly who can answer this, but the impacts to noise reduction, not during construction, but of cutting down all the trees and as a throughway barrier. You know, throughway's just getting louder and louder, and I don't know.
Yeah, that's
I know
not
in the,
my area.
Yeah, that's what I figured, yeah. I mean, I know in the EAF, someone brought up about the noise. I can't remember if that was for the construction or the whole project, but these are some of these are things to discuss with applicants too. But just throwing out all my concerns. Let me see if I can find it here.
Well, what I had planned to do, a couple of things. We never set ourselves as officially as lead agency. Is that your note or his note?
I don't think you formally did. The 30 days lapsed, normally you acted as lead agency once that period runs, if you've declared your intent. But somewhere in the applicant's transmittal, it indicated you should take that status formally, so.
Okay. Well,
You can ratify the, you can ratify that you acted as lead agency following the lapse of the 30-day period, which would have been January 2014?
Probably. It's a long time ago.
Quite some time. And you've been acting like a lead agency ever since, so.
So,
It was circulated November 22nd,
so usually, and again, I guess you get into the habit of, once you decide you're going to be lead agency, nobody rushes to the forefront to say, no, I want to do it, so you end up doing it. But to formally document it, that's, we declared ourselves lead agency, notified all involved and interested parties back in November of 2014. They all acquiesced to our determination of lead agency, so I move that we become lead agency for the Trans-Hudson project.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, take care of that. The other thing I wanted to go over is what David sent out Friday night. Generally what we have done, and we've, for those around, and we did it in Park Point, is usually to get a handle on the EAF. We would do it in parts. And what I propose doing is taking a look at the EAF and going through the parts tonight. But before we get there, I'd like the applicant come up, and I'd like Dave to go over Dave's review of their September 14th. So.
Can I just ask one question of you guys? All the files that we got from the Dropbox are all like non-searchable PDFs, which is really hard. Can you guys send files in the future that we can do searches on? Because it's like they're scanned as pictures or something. A little technological note. I know we have this with Park Point too.
Well,
Makes
yeah.
it so much easier. Rather than reading everywhere.
You weren't able to convert them back like to a Word program and then search that way?
I maybe could have, but
You maybe
yeah,
could have,
3
okay.
o'clock this afternoon. Yeah, I had to rely on paper.
Okay, in reviewing your September 14th submission, Dave, and you got a copy of this, right, Justin?
Yes.
Okay, so I'd just like Dave to go over some of the things so we know what we're talking about, what are some of the things that he located.
One of the things that was added to the plan set was a third pad site concept plan. It was prepared to show that the improvements that would be necessary for that site are independent. The stormwater, the water, and the sewer can all be handled within the area that's left there on the site. Just a note here after the list of information that we received about the improvements on 299 have been revised. The new location of the North Butt Corners Road. A couple items that were new to this plan set. Generally, our review showed that many of the items that were in our previous review comments have been addressed. There are some technical issues in the site plan. There was a number of items on the EAF that we think needs a little more consideration by the applicant. Again, some of them are very minor. As an example, adding the coverage under the stormwater permit in the item BG there. It is a permitted use in the zoning district, so that should be checked yes. The Ulster County Sheriff's Office should be included. The rescue squad should be included as an emergency medical service. I've added a few of the additional parks that are nearby. The total acreage of the land disturbed is 5.4 in the SWIP and on the plans, and in the EAF it was less than that. So we're asking for consistency there. The height of the building is 39 feet on the rendering, and the EAF is less than that. I think it's because the rendering came after the EAF, is my guess, and it just needs updated. Impervious surface is 2.01 acres, which differs from the SWIP. It was a culvert instead of an inlet. It's under North Butt Corners. There was a electricity demand that looked like it was off. I just want to get that verified. The producing odors for more than 1 hour per day is something that we thought the restaurant operation should be noted there. Just thinking of Burger King's greatest ad, I think, is their
Hey, just on that one, is a restaurant discharge concern could be an odor? Is that something that you typically see on EAFs?
There is an odor there, yeah.
You're asking if an odor is an odor.
Some of them are good, some of them are not so.
All right. Just that there is a connotation that it's severely bad, because if there is, okay.
I mean, I think even a good odor is an odor.
Yeah, smell of chocolate?
Exactly. Sometimes, yeah.
The acreage doesn't add up before and after completion. I think there's about 0.3 acres that's on one and not on the other.
I think so.
Is that capital?
I'm suggesting that endangered species add something about the roost site habitat that might be present on the property for bats.
So your memo says is. Is it might be?
I believe the report, Robert's report, said that there was the possibility of roost habitat there.
Oh, okay.
Oh, for two listed species, my report states the Indiana bat. Again, just because it's wooded habitat. And the other is northern long-eared bat, which is federally listed. At the time I wrote my report, I don't believe it was listed by the state, it's now listed by the state as a threat species.
Okay. But it may be present or it is present?
Well,
the tree.
If it's a tree, if it has trees on it, it generally falls under the guidelines of habitat because it's throughout New York State, and it just has to be addressed in terms of the federal and the state guidelines.
Clearing restrictions. Yes.
And what they generally recommend is that any tree clearing be done in a period from October 31st through March 31st to avoid any impact.
The referral comments from the Bike and Ped and from the DOT. We're just asking the board to see whether they believe those have been adequately addressed. We took a little bit of time here to look at some of the DOT stuff. I do want to say that this is something that Ken is looking at. We got a letter very late this afternoon from him. Haven't even had a chance to take a look at it yet. They have to have highway work permits for the entrances for any work that's in the highway, and I'm suggesting that we need to see that certainly before final site plan approval. I'm a little concerned about the the fill material that's coming in. The quantity of it is going to be according to the calculations shown in the narrative section. That's looking at 3 loads per hour at 7.5 weeks of truck traffic at 8-hour days. I'm a little concerned that we're starting that truck traffic at the end of morning peak and ending at the beginning of afternoon peak hour. I'm wondering if it would make more sense to add the number of loads per hour, put more trucks on, and shorten up the time. And I know it's hard to control out there when you come to work and there's 5 trucks that are already loaded and waiting for you. So it's the way that Stop and Shops was handled is there was some police services that were involved to make sure that that ran well. This is 1,800 truck trips, so it's a lot of trucks. Had a few site plan related comments. One was the demolition, make sure that there's an assessment of the any hazardous materials that might be in the old structure. And if they're there, they have to be dealt with according to state labor laws. Disturbance limits, I'm suggesting that they install a construction fence around the disturbance limits, the first thing. That kind of keeps the contractors within the area of disturbance and it doesn't get bigger. Floor plans, it's something that the board will need to see. Building renderings, the HVAC units. I see some dashed pieces on the rooftop. Are these rooftop units? Or?
Yeah, they are rooftop units.
We need to be able to see those and see if there's some shrouding or something that can make them disappear.
They're tucked behind the parapet. Just speaking about the building, it's just under 29 feet to the peak of that new access, and then the remainder of the structure is around 22 feet.
Right.
Yeah.
But it was height of building that's in the EAF, and so that height was actually the 29.
Yeah.
Just looking at the rendering, I'm wondering about the ceiling height in the building, and that mansard is quite deep. If that were less so, you could certainly get more of a peak on the roof, and that's something to look at.
If I could ask, what's the reason for the floor plans?
Something the board always asks for.
Actually,
looking at what the customer floor area is, the seating.
You should have it in the file, the CVS floor plan. That was in one of the original submissions.
That hasn't changed, or?
No.
Okay, I'll take a look.
No, the things on the building that we've been working on is the exterior elements.
So Five Guys, we haven't seen that yet. The site lighting has got some hot spots in it. I saw half a dozen areas that the foot candles was in the 8 to 11 range. We need to get an average of 2, and just 2 within parking areas. I know you're showing your grid way out there in the Netherlands with a lot of zeros that brings your average down, but I'm really looking for just the photometrics within the developed area itself so we can see what the average really is. I'm looking for a 3-to-1 uniformity ratio, so you won't see those really bright spots there. It looks like wattage could go down or pole heights go up, one of the two.
Yeah, the idea was to keep the pole heights a little bit lower, so that we're more pedestrian scale and not like a Stop and Shop, like a huge parking lot in that manner. We try to keep it more in scale to the use in the area there. So we can look at a couple of the spots.
When you've got a foot candle of 1 and then within 30 feet you've got a foot candle of 8, it's going to look like showtime there. So that's what we want to avoid. Slope stabilization, I think the DEC says anything greater than a 3-to-1 slope requires either an erosion control blanket or jute mat, and I think your plan shows 2-to-1.
Correct.
There's 2 extra parking spaces. The board can take a look at the narrative. CVS says that they need those. I'd still suggest that we take a look at shared parking with Five Guys and see if there's some justification to reduce those. We've talked a couple times about tree locations. We need to close the loop on that. Health Department approvals are needed prior to site plan. And then the stormwater comments are pretty minor details. There's also some issues on the notice of intent, but again, just very minor on that. The stormwater has largely been resolved on this. That was it.
It would be great if we could, firm up that tree waiver tonight, because we've discussed it for literally years with nothing being resolved. I have a great metaphor about it I could share. Would now be the time? Let's say we had a house and someone wanted to burn it down. Who knows why? That doesn't matter. Wouldn't you want to go in the house to see if there was like $1 million in it? That's the point of the tree, of looking at the trees. You have no idea what you're cutting down. You're just cutting it down. Saying that you're going to cut it all down so there's no need to look at it, it's kind of nonsensical. That's my point on it.
Well,
I hope you enjoyed my metaphor.
Okay, I think that's some of those things are board discussions, and we can look at that on it. I just wanted Dave to go over his memo on the latest documentation on site plan, and what I'd like to do now is, I think only one question I have for you, and that's, I didn't get a cover level whether South Ohioville and 299 is in that mix of traffic lights. Because if you're going to end up doing Wildberry, it has to be in there too.
Absolutely.
But I didn't know if that was in the planning coordination.
Yes. Yeah, part of the response to the DOT back in May of this year, we looked at everything from South Ohioville all the way to Manheim Boulevard. And the coordination that we looked at for tying in here at South Putt Corner was tying into Cherry Hill, the equipment's already there, and tying into the ramp. The Wildberry study was tying in the South Ohioville signal. That was part of that.
So so let me just, hypothetically, we approve the project, you go back to DOT, say I have this coordination plan laid out on it. You will pick up all the intersections?
You would have to pick up, right now they had us go to the thruway ramp because the tie-in at South Ohioville was triggered by the additional traffic from Wildberry, okay? Because the added volume on South Ohioville Road. So from their perspective, they wanted us to go up to the ramp. And then that could be added to either DOT would do it, or they could put it as another condition on this project or on the Wildberry project.
All right. That was one of the questions I had on that.
I have a question about the slip lane that's leaving. Was that slip lane going to leave whether or not, so I had this discussion with someone. They thought it was going to leave anyway because of the bike.
Well, yeah.
So I just
what
want to
DOT relayed to us was they wanted the slip lane, regardless of this project. There were some accidents that occurred at that location because when people come off the slip lane and yield to go on to North Putt Corners Road, they weren't yielding when traffic was coming from South Putt Corners going north. So there was some accident history there. They asked us to remove it as part of our improvement to the intersection. But it was our understanding that if this project wasn't going ahead, at some point, DOT is part of the bike lane or pedestrian improvements, because one of the conditions they placed on this project is to do the pedestrian crossings on all four corners, including the signal equipment for that. In terms of the slip ramp elimination, one of the other requirements is that we have to put in a right turn signal overlap. So even though the slip lane is being eliminated, there will be a new signal head that will allow traffic to make the right turn when traffic southbound coming on North Put Corners Road towards 299. There will be an advanced phase for people to come down and either make a left onto 299 towards the thruway or go straight across. During that time period, there would be an overlap so that the people that are in the slip lane would actually have a green arrow so that they could occur at the same time. So
Is it a right,
part of
is
it
it a
is,
right turn only lane?
it's a right turn only lane. That's there today, and it will remain there today as part of our improvements. Correct. We're not eliminating the lane, absolutely not. And the channelization island will be removed because of the items I mentioned, the accidents, and to better accommodate pedestrians and bikes, which we're also responsible for the bike lane along 299 as part of the permit that they referred to. That's all part of our permit requirements. The signal upgrades, the pedestrian upgrades in terms of walk crossings, the bike lane, and the signal overlap to accommodate the right turn off of 299 on North Performance Road.
So are you going to have a red arrow when the pedestrian?
It would be a red ball, red control, and on that head would be a red arrow.
Red arrow,
On that.
okay, because I know there's another intersection in town and that's frequently a problem.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the current standard is green arrow and red arrow on that particular location.
Okay, is there anything else? Because I'd like to see where to have some board discussion. So, can you, yes.
May I? I just want to go over a couple points that I thought were noteworthy of the submission that we provided. Do you mind if I take 2 minutes? Okay. As Dave mentioned, we did do in our full submission back to the board, we re-engineered the site and moved the access on North Putt a little over 200 feet to the north, so at the crest of that little knoll that's right there. The prior access, we had met the queue and the site distances where the prior access was, but we further increased what we have for our site distance and also queue further from the queue on North Putt, but also it added to the queue that would be allowed on site if needed. So that was one thing I wanted to point out.
You still have your island in there, right?
We did put an island in there as the
Okay.
county was looking for, so that we had that kind of safe haven there for crossing the access on 299. Phil mentioned the improvements, the full pedestrian improvements for the intersection. So we'll be on each leg of this, we will have a crosswalk and ped head there for crossing. We did reduce the earthwork in digging back into the grading, and no pun intended, but we cut back about 5,000 cubic yards from the total fill material that's being brought in, and that equated to about 192 trucks. So we did reduce some of those numbers. The building, I thought the elevation, Mr. Rivera, I thought you had a question about how it looked, so I thought that spells out the peak of what it's going to look like. It covers that entire front access and walkway area there. And I pulled up for everyone that in Fishkill and Pleasant Valley, they have this same type of covering, so I thought take it from the plan and put it into a real world situation that you can record knowledge around. Front one is, let's see, that's Fishkill, 52, and second sheet is Pleasant Valley. I'm sorry. So those are two constructed stores that have the same treatment. And then also, we also logged in the soil test with the Ulster County Health Department for the set house. So we've advanced our process with them to the extent that we can at this point. So that's it. That's all.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Do I get a chance?
Well, I gave Justin a chance.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Yeah. Usually the lawyer wants to go first before the engineer.
I'd like to go back, so I'd like to go back. I just wanted to take a moment to just recap where we are in the process and what I see as the steps going forward, which I think is the same with the board, just to go over it. Just on the project itself, there's a lot of public comment, a lot of back and forth, a lot of details on the plans, but really what we're dealing with is a small site, 5.6 acres, 5.7 acres roughly. What we're proposing is a permitted use within the zoning code. We have a project that's fully compliant with bulk density and setbacks and all that good stuff, right? So there's no variances associated with the project, okay? I know that there's been a lot of public comment about the project. Public comment's been going on since, I think we started this in May of this year. And I know that, some people may not like to hear it, but it seems that the public comment is very repetitive at this point. It may be repetitive is the wrong way. It's the same issues coming up over and over again. And it's not that we haven't addressed the issues, we've addressed the issues. People may not like the answers. But the goal here, and the way the system is set up in New York, is that it's not the goal is not to reach a consensus with the public. The goal is not to get the public on your side. The goal is to hear the public's comments, and that's to guide the board, but it's up to the board to finally decide on the technical merits of the project. And there's the town zoning code, there's applicable town law that goes into that. So at some point, it has to come that the ball goes back over to the planning board. And with the aid of your consultants, you have to make a decision. And we're getting pretty close to that point right now. So my first comment is that I really just don't see the need for the public hearing to continue. We've heard what we've heard. I'll say to the board, I can't believe it's gone on this long, but it has, and maybe that's a tradition sort of in the town of New Paltz, but I kind of think enough's enough. This has probably been the 6th session, maybe 7th session, something like that. So
they all blend together.
They all blend together, I know, they all blend together.
I'm not sure what the application is.
Yeah, and I've gone back and I've read the transcripts, I've read them from cover to cover, and read it. People have brought up issues, and I understand they're passionate about it, but I think the issues have now been flushed out, and it's up to the board to make decisions about whether the project's approvable. And I don't mean tonight, but I'm really getting to the point here, I really think the public hearing should be closed on the project. And then the one other issue I'll bring up, because it then immediately goes into what happens after that. And obviously, after the public hearing is closed, the board, as part of your deciding the project, you have to reach some sort of secret determination. And you've got a lot of information that can support your decision and guide your decision about that. But clearly, in my mind, I've been land use practicing for a long time on both sides, on the public side and on the private side. This project does not qualify for an environmental impact statement. As much as people may like to throw that term around, there's nothing to be gained by that. This board will get no additional information going through the EIS process. In its root, it's a very simple project of a commercial building on a commercially zoned piece of land, and typically with that, you have the traffic study, you have the site plan, you have the stormwater pollution prevention plan, you have an environmental resource review that we've done and our own consultant has done. All that's the information you would get in an EIS. And sometimes people will say, oh, we need the EIS process because we need public input. Well, for goodness sakes, we've had a lot of public input on this project. And so I really can't see what that would gain. The project doesn't qualify for it. And I hate to talk like a lawyer, but I do think if the board was to posit the project, that's actionable. There are not a lot of cases where you could challenge that, but I think this is one of the ones we could challenge it. And again, not to be adversarial, I don't think there's anything to be gained from it. You're not going to get any new additional information because of it. So I'm hoping that as we push away from the table here, that the board is going to decide at least tonight to close the public hearing process and, you know, move on to the technical review of the project and get to a decision. And, you know, again, get to the decision as soon as we can, and whether it's yes or whether it's no, we need to get to a decision.
Can I just say, I think that I agree it's gone on for so long and that we need to get to seeker. I think on our, or at least my end, we keep asking for more information from you guys, and I think it's important that the public review that, and that's why it's like kind of this endless loop. So, but I agree that it's been a while.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all, and I'd like to get into some board discussion now. So,
I wanted to tag into that. Environmental review.
One of the things that we've done in the past when we have projects that have a lot of parts and bells and whistles on them is try to review the environmental part 2 in sections. So we'll spend a board meeting, we'll lay out which sections we want to discuss. We'll kind of go over them, see what issues we have, in order to streamline or eliminate areas that we're in agreement with, and save our experts for the areas that we need further discussion on. So we have a one-on-one back and forth. One of the advantages of bringing Norbert to this meeting was the work that he's done and some of the things that will appear on going through the environmental assessment form.
Before we get to part 2, I have some questions about part 1. Could we go over them, or should we? I just have some, from all the information we've received, we haven't really discussed it as a board. I just have 8 quick points.
Okay.
All right. I still don't get why we can't require a new part 1 EAF that looks at a maximum build out of the site. I think we should talk about it as a board. I just still feel like I've read all the things on both sides, but I feel like how can we really look at this project unless we're looking at the whole site? I still think it's segmentation. I'm not a lawyer. That's my first point.
Well, to the extent that...
I mean, I know we got that information, but it's just a couple paragraphs, and it seems like the traffic study doesn't... Wait a minute. We talked about, in August, asking our traffic consultant to reevaluate based on...
And that's part of the part 2.
Okay.
Traffic wasn't going to be discussed tonight at all.
Okay.
But I would, to the extent that questions on the full build-out, impact, stormwater,
Exactly,
impact traffic, when we go over those things, we'll work with Dave to make sure that we know, from that we can understand what that would mean when we evaluate that. Okay? So you're looking at cumulative impacts, and I'm looking at cumulative impacts in specific areas. Traffic, water, stormwater. Those are the areas that would get impacted most by building out that third pad. So when we get to those areas in part 2, let's ask, do we have enough information to make a decision on that? And what is the impact of that over and above that? So that's why I think we can address that.
Okay. Well, I have a couple other traffic things, but I guess, all right, so I'll wait. Shared parking, I guess we could discuss that.
Site plan.
Okay, all right.
We'll put it in a parking lot there. I think there's some, again, that's from the site plan point of view.
Yeah, we've been kind of tossing around for like 2 years. Yeah, okay, 2 things. Dave mentioned about this requiring this traffic management plan. Yeah, let's do it. Great.
Good idea.
Done.
What do you think?
So, yeah, should we, I don't know, how do we go about doing that? I would make a motion that we require a traffic management plan.
Let's define what we're talking about.
You want to be able to get the trucks in with the least amount of disturbance to everybody that's trying to use the roadways.
maybe that's haul routes that we have to see where they're getting the borrow material from. It's certainly going to be flagman, it's going to be timing on when trucks are allowed to come in.
Okay.
And what the board did with the Stop and Shop, for example, was to require the applicant to enter into an agreement, provide for police, provide a generic or general traffic management plan. It would be adjusted over time if there were difficulties or issues that came up. So if somebody was in control, the applicant had an obligation to follow that control, and it basically, as far as I know, proceeded fairly smoothly.
So I think that can be a condition of
Okay.
site plans to have the traffic management plan. I mean, there'll be some other, a list of conditions, but I think that definition is something we can put in, or would put in, definitely.
This would include like a drive-off mat, things like that.
Yeah, that's going to be something that's...
Tire washer or whatever is required.
That's required by the speedies now. Concrete washout area, the whole works.
Well, this is probably down the line too, a fiscal impact study. I think that's a great idea.
It's necessary.
Well, define what you want in a fiscal impact, so I think we can
Okay.
get to that,
I'm gonna study the
okay?
fiscal impacts of this project.
Well,
I mean, I think that there are fiscal consultants that we could hire to, didn't we do this for,
The only one you've done it for, as far as I can recall, is Park Point.
Yeah.
There is a requirement in the EIS for Wildberry that will also require fiscal impact.
Mhm.
But in both those cases, there was, I think, no doubt that there would be a significant impact, largely because of the pilot. In most cases that you've considered before that, including Stop and Shop, for example, which was a fairly large retail operation, which also has a pharmacy. And as far as I know, the Rite Aid as well. There has not been that kind of impact analysis that was done.
but is there anything that says that that could prevent us from doing it, or just that it
Well,
hasn't been done?
it's really a question, I think, of whether it fits in with your past practice.
Yeah.
And whether there's something about this project that makes it different. That's usually what the legal standard is. If you follow a practice in the past, you should have some logic rationale to explain why you're not following that practice in the present case.
So that's why I asked you the question, a fiscal impact for what?
Well, I
To
think,
what?
I think the argument would be that our community character, I don't know, can't support 4 pharmacies, I guess. I mean, you
But-
know, I don't know, I don't want to meddle into capitalism.
Or kind of extend out beyond the board's,
Yeah,
yes,
exactly, yeah.
we haven't gotten into where we can dictate who
Yeah.
comes in and who
No, I
doesn't.
know, but I guess, yeah, all right, I mean,
Think about it.
Yeah,
and
I'll think about it. Okay,
Meditate on it, but
Yeah.
unless I have some clear definition of what you're looking for
Yeah.
to do
I'll
any
get
type
to
of
that.
fiscal.
I'll get that.
Okay.
All right. Okay, I'm getting to the end of my list. Well, okay, my one question about the part 1 was the noise. Okay, so the noise here is on, it's page 8, M. I don't know. Will the proposed action produce noise that will exceed the existing ambient noise levels during construction, operation, or both? And they put no. I just don't get how that can be. I guess that's a question for you guys. Because during construction, I don't see how it can't be louder than trees doing nothing. And after construction, you'll have all those tree barriers cut down, but
There's an analysis of the information we gave you that examines the noise. It's in there.
Okay, well, let me find it. Maybe we could go over it, because.
We will,
Or is that something we can discuss in part 2?
Yep.
All right, great.
Does that address only during construction, or also after construction?
It's after construction.
After construction.
During construction, it's a temporary impact. It's probably not going to be any louder than the traffic that's out there already right now.
But okay. So I moved some of the questions to site plan.
That's great.
I moved some of the questions, need further definition on it, but other questions I think are apropos to
Yeah.
reviewing the part two.
Okay, so then the very last thing, the tree waiver, can we discuss that in part two?
I'm sorry.
The tree waiver. I mean, because I looked at our clearing and grading law, and
okay.
there's no reason why it shouldn't comply, this project.
Well, if you took a tree and you had to put a pit around the tree that was 20 feet wide, you would have no land left to build on.
So,
I'm not arguing one way or the other.
Well, that would mean that every time a tree grew up, that would keep
I'm
that
not
land
arguing for
from
not
ever being
cutting
built
down
on
the
again.
trees. I'm just saying we have this, all I'm saying is,
Well,
why not go look and see what trees are over 12 inches?
Well, that's why I asked Norbert about the site, because when I did walk through it with him, and they, yeah, there are
Yeah, I hear all
trees
that.
there.
It's a crappy area with no environmental value. I got that.
Well, no,
but we have-
I'm just saying, it's not like a white oak forest that was planted 100
Yeah.
years ago or anything else like that. But we can discuss that on land use,
Great.
okay?
Great, thank you, okay.
So what I'm getting at, what I'm driving at, I apologize if I'm pushing, is Dave sent out a kind of draft of looking through the environmental part two. Areas that have impacts on it, areas that don't have impacts, or at least don't meet any of the requirements. What I'd like to do is to break up the EAF in that same manner of looking at specific areas at a board meeting to discuss them and drive home one way or the other what we're going to write on that part. For instance, impact on land, there are a couple of issues there that I think we need to discuss and take some time to do it. But impact on geological features, there really aren't any impacts that meet the threshold on the EIS. So what I was looking for is really an ability to go through this, to lay this out such that we can take the different areas on it. And what I would like to do tonight is really to see if anybody has any objections to anything on the form that has a no impact that they've laid out on that. So,
Dave, do you have an extra copy of that?
This is the one thing that
Might
I
have.
forgot to look at today.
Because,
well, that's what I said. If he says no, if he says yes, what I'm gonna do is put it in the bucket and we're gonna talk about those in separate time. Like that.
Yeah, all the ends.
Okay? Like, no, like up here. He says they're impacts,
Yeah.
whether they are,
Well, and what means
yeah.
discernible impacts, right?
Right.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about them.
Okay.
But
Right.
tonight, I'm just looking for these notes.
Okay. Oh,
Okay?
those ones.
These
Okay.
ones. Okay, so I'd just like to go through them, and what I'll do for the next time we meet is to get a list of a couple of them, put them in, so you can focus in on those, look at the documentation, look at what we have in the material, and be able to discuss yays and nays and go through that. So tonight, all I'm looking through is, as I look at it now, well, Dave, why don't you just pick up really tonight for just the no's right now.
Okay. These are the thresholds under number one, the impact on land, and the no's is proposed action may
Well,
involve.
no, I was looking at the bigger bullet,
Oh.
category.
Easier yet. Maybe not. Impact on geological features. I had a no on that. I didn't see any features out there that were particularly exciting. They were, it looks like a farm field that's come back into forest, or it's on its way.
Anybody have any concerns about that? Okay.
Impact on flooding, it's not in the floodplain by
Number 5 is down on impact on flooding.
several hundred feet.
Okay.
Number 6 is impact on air. It's not in an air area, trying to think of the name, air attainment area, air quality attainment area, got it. It's not under the threshold that, I believe it's 1,000 car parking lot or something of that nature. It's a big threshold.
And there's no threshold or listed for cutting down trees?
No, we're gonna do that on land.
Oh, okay. So impact on air, but okay.
Impact on agricultural resources. I looked at the soils on the site and looked at the description in the soil survey book, and it's okay for like pasture land or woods, basically. It's pretty good soil for woods, but it's certainly not row crop soil. I'm not sure the prime farmland that's been thrown out there, I'm not sure that's accurate on this, by the soils that are mapped on the site.
Dave, got a question. As far as we're talking about soils, about all the soil that's being brought in, the fill that's being brought in, where does that fit into the spectrum of everything?
Just change the soil.
There will be a change in soil, I would expect. I don't know where their borrow areas is now, but we can certainly make sure it's clean soil.
Is the soil going to be tested, random testing that's brought in?
We'd certainly ask for that, Tom.
Is it a different type of soil?
I don't know what soil they're going to bring in at this point.
Yeah, we'd have to get closer to the site plan or a condition of site plan, because he may not be getting the soil until after a period
Make
of
sure
time.
it's clean.
So, well, again, that might be part of the plan
Do we
too.
know the source of the soil they're putting in? Is it construction debris or what is it?
We're not allowed.
That doesn't count. So
We don't know what the source is yet. I'm not sure that they know.
We don't know where we're going to approve.
See, those two things hinge on it, so I think probably as a condition of their transmission, or whatever the management plan, traffic management plan, bringing in that, we can put some condition about requirements of the soil, and talk about that. But as far as agricultural resources,
Yeah, you guys don't want that soil.
It has to be a soil that you can compact and really build on. So they'd be killing themselves if they brought in some really crappy soil.
But it would also have an impact on the wetlands or potential wetlands down the road, the type of soil.
We're not, the object is to make sure that nothing goes off-site as far as erosion, and that's part of the DEC's methods for making sure that slopes are stable, and during construction especially, that there's no migration of soil from the site, no runoff that is laden.
okay.
Number 10 is impact on historic and archaeological resources, and that, number 10 says that the action may occur in or adjacent to a historic or archaeological resource, and that's why we check that as a note. Nothing adjacent.
Sure. There's nothing directly adjacent to it.
Number 11 was impact on open space and recreation, and it's privately owned. It's not open space, open to the public. Number 12 was on a CEA, and there's no CEA designated there.
Yeah, just out of curiosity, who can designate a CEA? Could the town designate a CEA, or?
There's a formal process that you go through.
So it's not a state designation, it could be a local
Correct.
designation.
It is local designation, and you register it with the DEC.
So if the town chose to designate these areas,
There's a process.
CEA, they could do that.
You have to have a reason to do it. You have to, there's some criteria for it.
I have a question about the critical environmental areas. Are they shown on a master plan for the town?
There's none in town.
There's none in there. None in your town.
Makes it easy.
It's easy. There aren't any.
I had number 16 as a no after going through all of the different thresholds here.
Did you look at number 15? Cheating. 15.
The only one that really caught there was proposed action may result in an increase in the rate of disposable processing of solid waste. That's such a minor increase that I wouldn't expect that would be a concern on human health.
Or people buy more drugs.
Never thought of that.
Okay.
That's the end of the no's. There's a few
Okay.
of them there that I didn't want to touch.
Well, again, I just want to get the board on there. I would like to, yeah, let's see if we're ready to discuss it. If not, we can postpone it, but.
It's
I just wanted to
required by the Board of Health, depending on what the...
see if the board had any
It's also part of the town.
other areas. What I'd like to do now is to break up the, and I'll do that and put it in the agenda when we meet again, to identify certain areas, and we can talk about them, drill down and eliminate, or go further on it and see if we have answers, or see if we have all the information, or we need more information, or what have you on that. But we'll drill down on that. With that in mind, as we've had the hearings go on for quite a while, we've, I think, gotten good information from the public on this to address these areas that have been raised up numerous times. So we didn't address any of the, tonight we didn't address, when we did the part two, any of the things that have been brought up by the public. So I rented an opportunity when we do discuss it to incorporate some of the issues that have been raised. But I would like to close the public hearing and give the people 10 business days right to submit any written comments, and to use that information going forward to continue our review of part two. How does the board feel about that?
Well, I think we should possibly limit it rather than have it open-ended each time. But I kind of don't like the idea of just closing off the public hearing at this point, because there may be new topics coming up as we discussed, that people will become cognizant of, and maybe want to contribute to them. So I'd like to keep some form, if it's limited, half an hour or whatever, keep it open for at least some time until the public interest diminishes.
Can you do that? Can you keep it open for half an hour?
I don't know if you can do a public hearing.
We haven't really had anything new in quite some time. People brought up good points, but they're considered repetitive at this point. And every time somebody makes a comment, then we have to have a response to it, which just further lengthens out the process. And I think that if we close it, if if something comes to light, we don't know. We can open it up again. We can invite, anybody can speak during the public comment, and we can utilize that to give people a vent.
You can certainly encourage written comment.
Yes.
So they don't take up the entire public comment.
But one part of when I get behind the public comment is to get other people who are watching us currently through public media to get interested in the topic. And that kind of stimulates other people to comment, and I think we shouldn't discourage that by having written comment, which are practically not accessible. They're legally accessible, but not publicly.
It depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to get new information or perspectives which aren't available to you, that is one mechanism you can employ, which doesn't mean that you preclude the opportunity for someone to speak, but it may make it more efficient from the standpoint. If somebody just wants you to pay attention to something, they can send a letter and they can put you on.
But that same topic may be of interest to other residents of the town.
And the board may certainly bring it up and say, we got a letter regarding this. If anybody is interested, or I mean, you can make a decision.
Okay, fine. So could we have a session where the board reads interesting public comments?
Kind of like that little teleprompter thing that scrolls it.
I think
There's tools you can use to accomplish your goal if you wish to. You have had, one thing you don't normally do is have public hearings on site plans. So you have taken one step there, and that step is not required by secret, something you've chosen to do. So you've provided the opportunity, you have engagement from the public, there's a significant amount of information you've already gotten, and it really becomes a question of diminishing returns and how the board can efficiently operate. So, at the beginning here, you certainly got the opportunity to engage the public, and they've been here and they've made many good points. The question is, you've been doing that for 3 months. Is this something that you need to do, or is it something that if the issue arises?
I think you could probably change the format, or at least encourage them to, or let them know it's available to make public statements without the public comment session being open at the beginning of each session.
Well, we do have the ability of people to make public comments during our comment session on it. I think what I want to do is get bounds on this public hearing. Like I said, we've received the information. We're giving people another 2 weeks to submit any additional documentation. And like if something significant comes up, and we got concerns on it, we could open it again. Or, from your point of view, if people have a comment to make, we do have that public comment session where they could make something, and we could see where it goes.
The difference is the public comment is the applicant isn't bound to respond to those. But certainly anybody on the planning board can grab that ball and request that information from the applicant.
So it's really the equivalent.
So they are protected in a way,
Yeah.
I agree with Lyle. I think we've heard a lot of great comments. It's been a while, and I think we need to, keep gathering info from the applicant, but move on and,
Gotta analyze all the stuff that we've been hearing about.
Yeah.
Adele?
Me too. I feel the same.
Okay,
So just to clarify your motion, the 10th business day after tonight is October 13th, which is Tuesday, because of the Columbus Day holiday.
Fine.
Make sure
I'll make a motion.
reports it accurately.
I'll make the motion to close the public hearing on a Trans Hudson Management Site Plan, allowing for written comments to be in by close of business, no later than close of business, October 13th.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, I think where I'm at now is that you've gotten Dave's thing. I'm gonna, in the agenda, put out a couple of different areas. First off, when we do get to traffic, I'll have our traffic consultant here on site, so you can ask him any questions you want. He did send out a memo at 5 o'clock today. That's why I didn't touch on traffic. You got a chance to read it first and all that, but we will do that. So I expect to take
Say refer to back then.
4 or 5 areas for the next meeting. I'll give you a heads up on that early, of which ones we want to do. If you got any objections to them, I don't have any any preconceived notions of looking at them. If you want to do one over another one, just let me know, and we can change that.
Since Norbert's here and Dave's referred to the Baghdad report in 3 areas, surface water, groundwater, and habitat. Not to decide those issues tonight, but since he's here, if there are questions about the information or anything in his report, maybe that's something that you want to go over, so he gets a sense of what your interests are and you get information he may have. Very good.
I can find my stuff in there. I didn't have anything specific on it, but
I think I'm okay.
But what we'll do is, before we go over those 3 areas, if there are questions or the board feels, let me know. We can either send them. I never like to spring questions on a guy off the cuff when he can do a little research and answer properly on it. So that to the extent that there are questions that you have that Norbert can answer, or what he did, or what he saw, or how it answers that question on the part 2, let me know, and then we'll get them up to Norm.
I have a question right now, I can just give to him to take home.
You can give him a question to take home.
If there are bat habitat, say, nesting sites or something, where you likely to see guano or any kind of signs on the tree, like if it was a historic site that they return to?
No, in fact, what the concern is with the Fish and Wildlife and DEC for the 2 bat species of concern, the northern long-eared bat, which is now listed, since my report came out, by the DEC as a threatened species, and the Indiana bat, which is both, that's federally and state listed, as well as the northern long-eared bat. What they're concerned about is their summertime roost habitat, where they brood rear, they use trees to brood, to raise their young. Their hibernacular wintering areas are very few and far between. And because of white nose syndrome, which a lot of people are familiar with, it's decimated bat population. So their concerns are more towards large forested areas that are being cleared. This is a relatively small site, there's relatively little clearing. If the applicant was to contact the agencies, the general guidance is, well, if you want to completely avoid any potential for impact, do tree clearing between October 31st and March 31st, when the bats are in their wintertime hibernacular. They wouldn't be using any of the trees. These are cave hibernating bats that are concerned. So, again, for a site this small, for relatively little clearing, the agencies aren't going to typically ask you to do anything.
So it's not the tree clearing that's critical, it's not taking a tree down when there's a bat living there.
When the bats could potentially be utilizing it. And the potential of that is, on this site, is extremely low.
Okay. That's all I have for the board. Right now, I would like to have one issue. I'd like to do that in our executive session, and we'll come out of executive session and close the meeting. So there's nothing more for the public.
No action will be taken?
No action will be taken.
Never approve the project when we meet.
No, not to worry.
If we do, I'll let you know. Don't wait up for the call.
What's the memo?
We're going to, during the meeting, we're going into executive session. Thank you.